Good morning. Hello. How's it? Okay. Let's see if... Looks like things are working. Let me just check my other stream. Yeah. No problems. Okay. So, this is... Okay, let me just make this statement for the record. This is the game, right, as it is now. Quite a few things work. Quite a few things are nice-ish. And a bunch of things are kind of shit. Okay, so... I guess we can play the game while we chat. Right, so there's a couple of issues, right? So first of all, my idea was to have this be my first version of the game that I proudly announced to the world in my first devlog. Now, I say the world, proudly announced to 10 or 15 people. Whatever, right? This was the idea, this version of the game. And I made a build. I was gonna get myself some just some footage of me playing the game. And as I played the game, I realized I didn't like it. And that's unfortunate, right? But there's a few real reasons why the game doesn't work. The first thing is, this is meant to be a logistics game to some degree. Well, it's a management game, right? But I like the idea of having to solve a logistics problem, right? So what does that mean? Well, it means you as the player need to make certain decisions that'll either improve the overall performance of your systems or potentially be detrimental to them. Right, so there are many other games that work like this, but or have this kind of idea. But the thing is, what I did was I made the logistics network so smart that it simply... let me create some of these. It simply does not fail. Right. It might get slow, and then the only decision you can make as the player is, oh, it seems I've got a little bit of a bottleneck. Let me make more ships. From that point on, the ships are smart enough to relocate to where they are needed, pick up what is required, deliver it to the most urgent thing. And that's kind of unfortunate, right? You never have the challenge of solving the logistics problem yourself. Now, how do you solve a logistics problem? So I thought about it, and I came back to games like Factorio, for instance, which is very obviously a logistics game. Right, but if you think about it, like, every time you want resources to go from point A to point B, you build a belt. Or in the mid game, well, not really mid game, but the later game, you build a train. And then super late in the game, you have the bots, right? And the bots kind of solve logistics, but they also feel bad, and they don't have the kind of throughput a belt might have. So, okay, what I've essentially implemented are bots. And I made them very good. Which kind of means that you don't need belts and you don't need trains. And that's kind of bad. Right? And if you think about it, the nice thing about something like a train, and this is in any game that's a kind of a management game, is you lay the track. There's physical infrastructure that you build as the player that decides or tells you, listen, this is my decision. This is my commitment. Trains drive here, right? And in my game, there's no strategic decision. There's no commitment from the player. You just make a ship, and it figures it out, right? It'll go where it needs to go when it needs to go there. No further input required from you, right? You don't lay the track. You don't do anything. You just configure some imports and exports. Let's get some stuff working here. Put some power in there, and some volatile extraction. Oh, that's a surface extractor. Whoopsie. It's okay. Just get some fuel in this business. Okay, but so that's obviously a big problem. The fact that I completely removed the need for the player to make anything that resembles an interesting choice for the logistics. Right, because that was kind of the point of the game. It was to give you some kind of an interesting logistical challenge. And what I replaced it with is requests and a very clever system that does everything for you. Like, yes, you have to click here and you have to do manage exports. And you have to set up an export. Right? But that's not an interesting strategic decision, really, right? It's very shallow. It's easy. There's also no commitment from you, because you could just go and, add another one or remove this one. It's like there's no physical infrastructure that you had to build. Yeah, you had to build the logistics up, but you always have to build that. That gets built every time anyway. So everywhere you'll have logistics in any case. So there's no real decision. It's like, do you want to use, or do you want to exploit this specific area? Yes, this region. Well, you have to build the logistics up. Right, that's just how it is. You don't get to really make a meaningful decision there. Right, so yeah, for instance, now I have, and this is another thing, you see what I've done, right? I went here and the strategic decision was Venus is a pretty good fuel hub. So I have to get volatile matter. I made one strategic decision, and that was specialize Venus for volatile matter extraction and make it an exporter. Okay, so maybe it was two decisions. Wow. Not really, because the second one isn't a good decision, really. But it's definitely, the first one is my decision, right? Okay, fine. However, after making a single decision, now I don't know if you were counting, but I had to click like 10 plus times before that happens. So not only did I have to build the logistics up, then I had to build this outpost. Then I had to build 3 extraction nodes. Then I had to add the volatile extractions modules into these extraction nodes. Now, I didn't fill them, but theoretically I could have filled them. Then I had to add the power. And this was something that bugged me so much when I was doing the testing. It was like, it feels bad. It's like, are you really expecting the player and to make 10, to do 10 clicks, make 10, or 20 little configurations when they only made one decision, and their decision was, I want volatile matter from Venus. That seems bad, right? And it is bad. And the same happened here. I came to Mercury, I'm like, this is a prime candidate for deep extraction. And what did I do? I clicked a bunch of times to get that set up. Again, feels terrible. Does it not have power? Yes, it doesn't have power. So you kind of see some of the issues I have with the game. And then another thing is the way information is being exposed to the player. Everything is in this hierarchy of... so we'll open Paint to explain this part. Woo, that's bright. Go away, brightness. So this is my other issue. I have the solar system. Okay. Then I have a region. And I have a sub-region. Okay, maybe this deep is not necessarily a problem. Then I have outposts. Or outpost inside the sub-region. And then in the outpost I have nodes. And then in the nodes I have modules. That is quite the hierarchy, right? And only like gameplay happens here. This is where you decide what you are doing. If that makes sense. If I'm saying it correctly. So what I mean by that is the nodes are kind of a restriction because you need certain nodes, like you need, an extraction node to be able to make an extraction or to add an extraction module. Or you'll need a processing node to add processing modules. So this is kind of like it's an intermediate step that limits you for some reason. The outpost itself is not really a problem, but the thing with the outpost is you might have multiple sub-regions, and then you need to build these outposts for every single sub-region. That also kind of feels like shit. And, it does things like, this is the kind of thing that happens, right? You start in a region. Right, so there we have our region. It's got, let's say, 5 sub-regions. Then you build an outpost in each of them. Right, that's my outpost. Wow. And then inside these outposts, you will have, you'll have a module. Wait, we'll have a you'll have a node. And then you have a module. Right, so all the information, so if you think about this now, you have this 5 times, and this is not necessarily the amount of times you'll have it. Like places like Jupiter might have up to 10. So you have this hierarchy. And what I need to do now is I need to make information flow through this hierarchy. But it's kind of shit. Because you need to do clicks, right? You need to click through this hierarchy before you can get to this level. So you have to delve 5 layers deep, essentially. And some of them I might have combined or whatever, but you have to 4 to 5 layers deep just to be able to get to a module and do something. And sometimes if you want to know what is this module doing, you'll have to come down to this level as well to figure out what the module is doing. And this feels terrible. It also feels terrible to build this many outposts. Because why? Why can't I just... And this is the thing, right? Why a Gavrion, you know, my idea here is, why can't I just, inside a region, so let's imagine this hierarchy. So let's zoom in on that side. So here's an alternative. What if there are virtually, you know, no... yeah, this zooming thing is hard. What if a region doesn't have sub-regions? But what if you as a player has the option to build one mining complex, right? Give it some big name. A processing complex, research complex. So you can build these things inside a region. Right? Then this processing complex could have, you know, production bays attached to it. Okay? Each production bay produces a material or a resource. So this could be, you know, alloys or ceramics. Whatever. But now here's a couple of things that happen. First of all, you know, when you're doing production, let's say, when you are in the production complex and you're adding these bays, you can do a couple of things. First of all, I can just let the player have a production complex at a certain level. And the level is essentially defining the capacity of the complex. And, you know, from a fantasy, in the in-world fantasy might be, well, I mean, it can produce more power at higher levels, which means you can easily add more of these bays without it, you know, grinding it to a halt or whatever. So this changes a few things, right? First of all, it makes it very easy to just upgrade these things. Normally, if you want more power, you'd have to send over modules, right? Now I could just be like, no, you know what? I want a tier 2 complex, and then I'll get, you know, a few more bays. Okay, great. And here's the trick. This is now where you play. With the module system, what you had to do was, you get all the way down here, you have a module. You click on the module and you set the recipe. Now, you don't set the recipe. You build the module that produces alloys. And the reason I'm going this way is because it should feel like an investment. Infrastructure is an investment. And I think initially I wanted to make like these magical assembling machines, right? From Factorio, essentially. That can just do anything. But now I feel like that is good for Factorio. Look, they've done an incredible job. Because the investment into getting those things working correctly is quite high in terms of, problem solving and design. Here, there's no investment if you can just change the recipe. So what I'm doing instead is I'm saying, look, you build a foundry for alloys or ceramics or whatever, and I can give them fancy names. You could remove them. You could tear them down if you feel like you want to change what you're making. So it's possible to change, but you're losing resources and time, and it costs something. You have to physically break down the infrastructure that exists and build new infrastructure. That feels bad, right? Or it's a little bit of friction. So the player might be, okay, am I really gonna just get rid of my alloy production? Or mining nodes in Satisfactory. Honestly, I have no idea how Satisfactory works. Maybe it does. But yeah. Yeah, but exactly. So there is something about not just changing everything for free. Yo, okay, that's a difficult name. Mana. I'm going to say Manav Pulka. Manav Pulka. Something like that. No, I didn't go to college or university for computer science. I went to university for mechanical engineering. Yeah, so Gavarian, there's something that resists you just going back and changing everything. Because it's work, right? It took you 20 minutes to set up the miner, to get the belts all made, and then for some reason, you just tear it all down. Like, that feels terrible, right? Yeah, I'm more like I'm a Factorio player. I like my factories in 2 dimensions. I've seen Satisfactory. It looks cool. It's on my wish list. It's been on my wish lists for very, very many years now, actually. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be a fan of the 3D thing. Is the Steam stream lagging? It says it's excellent on my side. It might be a delay, I don't know. But also, if the stream is lagging, it might also just be my amazing internet provider, and I can't do anything about that. Okay, yeah, but you see the thing. So this is my idea. You build things, you commit to things. It's infrastructure. You can't just change it whenever. The player should think about this before they do it. It should feel strategic. Not just like I'm configuring something and then moving on with my life. Because that's what I was doing, and I'll show you now. So you were at the module, it was producing something. Then you realize, oh, I need something else. Okay, click, change recipe. Well, that was the most, that was the boringest, the most boring thing I could have had the player do for that decision. It was zero friction. They didn't have to plan. They didn't have to strategize. They just did it. And that feels terrible. In my opinion, it doesn't feel like anything happened. Okay, and then we have mining, right? And mining is a similar issue. And I thought about this one and I was like, previously you would build 20 outposts, but now we have this big mining complex. You still might have resource deposits all over the region, right? You might have a moon over there, a planet over there, or maybe a bunch of asteroids. So I think all the player has to do now is decide which of these deposits they want to go exploit. And how mining is working from now, I think, is you have little extractors, little ships or whatever, drones, probes, whatever you want to call them. And, your first level of mining could be you have one probe, right? You have a small complex, one extractor. You send it over to go get some metal ore. Fine. And it's doing its thing. And then later you can upgrade this to go get some, I don't know, volatiles at a different deposit. So these little things would fly around and get them. But you still fundamentally only need one large mining, like a centralized mining place, which is the complex. And then the probes or the drones can just fly and go get the stuff and come back. And again, the thing I want to do is I want to collapse this hierarchy down to two things, essentially. And that is the region and these outposts. What this also does is it makes information accessibility, way easier. This mining complex knows how much it's producing. This production or processing complex knows how much it's producing. I only have to send that information one layer up to the region, and then you can see it on this view. When you click, on a planet that's effectively your region, all the information is available. Now I have to do, go to the region, manage the region. Okay, this one obviously only has one outpost now, but click on the outpost, click on extraction, and here I can technically see what I'm extracting. Yeah, it's a resource deposit, and you just pick where you send the miners, essentially. Now, for some regions, it's not going to make a big difference. Like for Mercury, which is very small, there's only really one place you want to go with your miners, right? You want to go to Mercury. But if you are at Jupiter, there's 4 moons and a big planet. And I could easily say that, look, a deposit could be like Jupiter is a deposit. It's a very rich deposit in volatiles. Okay. And I could say, look, you might be able to send 5 probes to mine or to extract the volatiles from Jupiter. So in total, this might be a massive mining complex that has 9 probes fly around doing their things. They can go to the moons and they can go to Jupiter. A lot of them can go to Jupiter. Where Mercury might be less interesting. But that also means you can have a lot of activity, like things are going to move. It's not just this, stationary outpost sitting there next to the moon telling you, oh yeah, I'm totally mining the moon. Don't worry about it. I could have a complex sit over here and you can see the things travel up and down mining. Which again, just makes this feel alive. Right? And I think where it's really going to pay off is with the asteroids, right? If you can imagine, I could have asteroid mining as well. And then, that could look quite nice with the activity. Okay, so let's see, actually, let's try and make the game do stuff. So let's see, you need an import of volatile matter. Let's do 5,000. You are exporting volatile matter. Yes, okay, fantastic. There the ship goes. Oh, I need to get... Hello, Vulcan. What's... I seem to have broken the game. For crying out loud. Okay, I definitely broke something, right? Yep. Okay. This is interesting. Vulcan has disappeared, so we can see it on the solar system. But it's stuck in some limbo state. Okay. But you can kind of see my fantasy in action here with the little ships moving around. The problem is, this was just me configuring a few things. There wasn't anything interesting in terms of building infrastructure to allow this. So, how am I planning to solve that? So, what I'm thinking is, we'll make corridors instead. And you can think of these like the train tracks, right? So these are physical infrastructure that defines how and where ships can fly. So if you make a corridor between Mercury and Venus, it'll look something like this, right? You'll have a bunch of activity in this region. But that doesn't mean the ships could go between Venus and Earth. You'd have to make another corridor. And what this allows is it allows for things like congestion to occur and for the player to make interesting strategic decisions. Also, ships are going to be fixed or assigned to a corridor. So your ships can't just go wherever they want. And that's a very important thing, because imagine your ships can just do whatever. And then let's say the Venus Mercury is a small corridor. You have like 5 ships servicing this corridor. And then one of them decides, you know what, I'm going to fly all the way to Jupiter via the corridor system. So maybe to Venus, Earth, then Jupiter, whatever. And it disappears from the corridor for a good 20 minutes because it's such a massive distance. And then in those 20 minutes, your corridor throughput has now decreased by 20%. Like, that's dumb, right? You don't want that. That's not within your control. So here's how it's going to work instead. You assign 5 ships. They stay in that corridor. The corridor throughput is what it is because of the ships you've assigned. Now, you could reassign ships. You could add more ships, whatever. But you decide the throughput. You decide the amount of ships that are allowed in that corridor. So now you are doing the planning. You are saying, okay, this I need medium throughput. I'll have a level 1 corridor with 5 ships. Here I'll have high throughput, so I'll put 10 ships. And the level of the corridor also make the ships maybe go fast or something like that. But now it's infrastructure. You build it. Are you planning on having planets? Yes. Okay, so I am planning on having planets. But I think it's the second part of the question that's actually getting to the point, right? Are the planets stationary or do they move? They are going to be stationary. I'm not going to make the planets move. So I might have it so that, on each playthrough, the planets might visually, move. So they might be in a different location slightly. But if they are moving, there's a bunch of things that can happen that I don't feel like makes for interesting. It's interesting from a mathematical perspective or whatever, but it might just be frustrating to a player because you're not gonna be able to predict certain things. So here's what I mean. Jupiter and Earth are far apart, right? Okay, that's fine. Sometimes, though, Jupiter and Earth might be very far apart. For instance, you know, if they are on opposite sides of the sun, right? And what about places like Neptune and Jupiter? So let's say you want a corridor, you want to ship things between Neptune and Jupiter. All of a sudden, sometimes that distance isn't so bad. Other times, it's going to be very bad, right? No, I know Kerbal Space Program. No, it's an amazing game. It's just not the game I want to make. And I don't feel like it's not about logistics necessarily. Or it's not about building, you know, massive infrastructure across the solar system or whatever. It's a little bit different, right? It's a physics simulation game. And I don't want to make, you know, orbital physics and simulations like that. Now, it's not going to be orbital physics necessarily. It's just moving the planets. But still, that does make it a little bit more complicated. And I don't feel like that's necessarily the problem you want the player to solve. So for me, you can think of this as a snapshot or a map. And since distances are pretty stable, it's predictable. Yeah, look, additional complexity is very cool. And I have to rein myself in many times because I keep wanting to go into this needs to be realistic, right? And even things like travel times between planets. Right, how realistic does that have to be? Right, because at some point, you know, you might be thinking, oh no, we need to make it super realistic or whatever, but then it kind of gets... things take so long, it's kind of annoying, right? Or if you try to balance things like, how long does it take to build something in comparison to travel? You know, yo, totally sane. How's it going, man? And where that problem comes in is, let's say you're building a outpost or one of these complexes, right? Does that take a year? Right, if it takes a year, does that mean I can only do one trip to Mars in that time? That feels kind of bad. So what I'm thinking is these corridors might increase speed somewhat. I might make it so that the game or the movement speed of things and the construction speed are not necessarily the same, but, you know, try to be internally consistent in some way. It's like, if you think about other games, they all do this, right? If you play, let's say, a RTS game like Age of Empires, you know, and you tell a single villager to build a wall, right? That guy will slap that wall down in no time. And then it's a massive, thick stone wall. And then compare that to, you know, everything else that happens in the game. It's like, it shouldn't be possible. But that's not the point. Like, not everything needs to be exactly perfect in terms of realism. Because that's not the point of the game. That's not what makes it fun. So I need to occasionally remind myself of that, because I tend to want to make it realistic, and then I just suck the fun out of it. Because now it's just tedious or boring. right? Tedious is not fun. You don't want it to be tedious. You don't want it to be boring. But yeah, you can kind of see the idea here with your all this movement. So we'll make these corridors instead. I don't know if I can actually logistics. Let's see if I can import some things here. And import some fuel. Let's see if this works. Except I'm paused. So things should start moving over the side. And they are. Okay, we can actually... okay. Okay, we can't get this thing to work now because Vulcan completely disappeared off the face of the planet. Or maybe I can anchor Vulcan? Oh yeah, as soon as Vulcan is anchored, everything breaks. And I believe this is probably an error. However... this is a build of the game, right? I'm not in Unity right now, so I can't check what error that is. Unfortunately. So we can set up an export. So now we should see ships fly this way as well. Yep. There they go. Because we needed a bunch of heavy elements at this place. Look at that. Now it's cool, right? The little ships flying about, but I don't, again, all the logistics, decision making, and challenge was, basically, I made the ships too smart, and all the balancing things that you have to do, or all the congestion, everything, all of that stuff, it's not your problem. The ships will figure it out automatically. Which kind of feels like I'm missing the point then of having a game where logistics is important. Like, you will never have congestion. You will never accidentally starve one place of a resource while having too much at a different place. Like, everything's going to be balanced at all times. And that's not really the idea. Okay, so let's call that a recording for the game, and let's start working on rebuilding everything. So I also had a different problem that's got nothing to do with the gameplay, but it's a architecture problem. It's the way I made the game work. Similar to how there were these the complex hierarchy in the game structure itself, my code obviously looked exactly the same. So I leaned heavily into object-oriented programming, and it's kind of annoying, I'll be honest. I don't like what I built. But apart from that is, the next problem I had was the data was so scattered in my code base that when I thought about building a save system to save and load the game state, I immediately got a pain in my stomach because I was like, where the hell's all my data? I'd have to go through each object throughout the whole game and figure out what data to save. And then I had to figure out how to build the hierarchy again and give the data to each of those things. Which felt very unnatural or unnecessary. While changing the gameplay to be more, or less hierarchical, I decided to also rewrite some of the code and some of the systems to be less hierarchical. So now it's going to look a little bit more like procedural or data orientated in terms of the architecture, because that means my data lives as close to the top level and on the same level as I can get it. And hopefully that helps me easily make a save system later. So that's my idea. And I've started with the mining system. So the mining system now exists halfway. So we have a way of mining. And this is now kind of cool, right? All the mining is done here. And we have our mining complexes. And we physically just... And these things are just dumb, right? They don't do anything special. Actually, they don't do anything. They are just some data. So this is a mining complex. It's just some data. So the data is there, and then all I have to do for the mining system is loop through my mining complexes and tell them to do these things. Whereas previously, I had to drill down to the outpost level, to the module level, and then I had to do a update module method, and then the module does everything internally, but it also means the data lives internally to that module. Now the data lives right here, and the mining system lives in my simulation manager. So we literally have simulation manager, which is very top level, mining system, and all the data is inside the mining system. I don't have to go look for it, which I think is a little better. And I'm going to do the same with logistics. I'm going to do the same with processing or production or whatever else I need to put in the game. All right, so let's see. Where was I stuck last time? Okay. So I got to the point where I was creating shipments, and now I have to send shipments. Okay, so I was finding the best supplier, and I added a shipment to that supplier. Okay. So there's a couple of things I need to decide now. The first thing is, would it be possible to send a partial shipment? Yeah, so I need to think about this now. Oop. It's a lot of white. Get out. Get away. Yeah, so the question I have here is now, if you have a shipment, and shipments work a little bit differently. I changed it slightly, but shipments can be containerized. So the idea is, let's say you want 1,000 fuel to be delivered. So that's the complete shipment, 1,000 fuel. One container of fuel can take 100. Right? So that means we have to ship 10 containers. Okay. So all of that is true. Now my question is, if you have a ship, right, and this ship can take, this ship has a capacity of, let's say, 20 containers. So that's fine. But there's already, 15 containers on the ship for other shipments or whatever. So it's already 15 out of 20. So let's say 15 out of 20 space is used. Do I allow 10 of these containers? Do I allow 5 of these containers to go on the ship? So do I put 5 of my fuel containers on the ship, let it transport, and then when the next ship comes in and there's space available, I add the containers to that ship? Right? I feel like that could be something I do. But then I might have to structure this a little bit differently in my code here. So I added a shipment, and a shipment in this case is just a destination, a resource, and amount, right? And this is the other thing that I'm now thinking about, is that shipment could live in two positions. So this is maybe hub A, right? So we've allocated this at hub A, and then at hub B, that shipment could also live, right? Because the idea could be that, look, okay, half of it moved, so there's a half shipment here, a half shipment here, and now it's trying to get to hub C at the end of the day. But this kind of thing happens. Hub A was the original supplier. It only got half of it over. It's waiting to send the other half. So now our shipment is living here and here. And then what could happen is this one might be sent sooner than this one. So then we fulfill half of the shipment. So now half of the shipment is already at the destination. And none of the shipment is at hub B. Right. And I don't just want the material or the resources to go into the inventory of hub B. I kind of want to just travel via hub B. Right. So this is now the thing, because with the corridors and all that, that's how I want it to work. Okay, so now the question is, does the logistics hub so I essentially need to create new shipments. So I need to think about this a little bit differently. So we can have a destination, a resource, an amount. I'm not gonna make the shipment know where all its parts are. I don't think that's a good idea. How did I do this previously with my logistics? Let's see. Yeah, so I would send stuff. Yeah, okay. So I'd keep track of unmet demand, but everything was sent direct. There wasn't this stop by corridor system, so we didn't have these multiple corridors that we had to go through. So I'd have to think about this a little bit. Is a shipment I almost think, okay, what I think we should do is create new shipments and let this shipment so what I'm thinking is we can have in transit shipments, and then, so this is you can have shipments that were created so new. So it's something like shipments that this specific hub are trying to fill, and then shipments that are just traveling through the hub. So there's two different types of shipments. Right. Okay. I don't know what to call these though. Let's ask ChatGPT. It's good at naming things. Like, okay, I'm trying to make shipments work for my game. So what I'm thinking is, you have a hub, and a shipment gets created when that hub can be a supplier of a specific demand. Right? But then, that shipment can be broken into smaller shipments, essentially. So I don't know if it should be called a shipment or something else. But let's imagine you have 1,000 resources at the hub, that's the supplying hub. And you have a freighter, it picks up 500. Right, so I kind of slice the shipment in half. But I want to keep track of that in some way, because that freighter needs to know that 500 stuff, where's it going? So obviously it takes it to the next node, but that node then evaluates, oh, this 500 stuff that just got here, is it for me, or am I just a freight forwarder, right? Am I just sending this on to the next guy? That's kind of what I want to do. Something like that. But I don't know what to call these things. I'm struggling with the names of the different types of shipments, or if they are all shipments, I don't even know. This is what I like about ChatGPT. I can just talk to it and tell it how dumb I am, and it can help me organize. Okay, yeah, so we need to... We have a demand, we have a shipment, yes. That's an allocation. Okay. Okay, this is a good idea. Okay, so this is the word I was looking for, consignment. Okay, so we should break this down into a few things. So we might have a public class consignment, which is effectively so we have a demand, we have a shipment, we have cargo, essentially. Okay, wait. What if we just do shipment and cargo? Right. So the things that we move, so our shipment is this thing. And we can say that our shipment has a total quantity. So we have the destination. We could create the origin. I guess. Okay, so the way I would like to order this then is rather something like this. So we have the origin hub, the destination. Then we have the resource. Okay, fine. Let's call this something else. The total amount. Okay. And then we'll have another one called remaining. Okay, remaining amount. Okay. Then the cargo actually becomes a little simpler. So it could know its shipment. I think maybe not. Doesn't matter. It could matter. But the idea here is it knows where it's going. Well, if it knows the shipment, then it doesn't need to know where it's going. But maybe we do the destination, the resource, and public int amount. Okay, so we create a cargo instead. And the cargo travels, can be consumed or it cannot be consumed. The shipment lives, so the shipment is not what travels, cargo travels. And the shipment can be destroyed or deleted or whatever when the remaining amount is 0. Okay. So, there's a shipment and a list of cargo. Cargo can either be consumed or forwarded to the next thing. Cargoes. Shipment cargo. I don't know. Whatever, cargoes. It's fine. Okay. Yeah, I like this. And what we can do now is the freighter can now also just have a list of cargoes. Number of resource containers. I don't know if I need that. No, we have a list of cargoes. Each cargo has a resource and an amount. Okay, I like this. I like this. This now feels a little bit better. Okay, so we create a shipment. And we also need to give it a destination. Origin, I mean. So, origin equals demand... no. Wait. Is equal to best supplier dot hub. Wait, no, best supplier is a hub. Okay, yes. And we should also check if best supplier is still null, right? Well, if it's still equal to null, that means we couldn't find a supplier. Then we just continue, right? We just go to the next demand and check if we can find a supplier for that. So we can't create a shipment if we haven't found a supplier. Total amount and then remaining amount equals demand dot amount. Okay. Yeah, so there's one thing I'm thinking about now, and that is, you know, when I create a shipment, that means it's kind of like a reservation, right? So the resources are reserved. They packed, cargoed, cargorized, whatever. They are reserved for a specific, you know, customer or whatever. So we might have to do something about that with the suppliers, right? Yeah, so when we create this shipment, we might want to make the supplier amount reduce, because there might be another demand for the same resource, right, at a different hub. And then that supplier should know that, oh, listen, I don't actually have that much left. Go look for another supplier. Yeah, I should also maybe check for this amount and say, look, it might be a good idea to check if the entire demand has been met as well. Right, that's actually a good point. So we might get the best supplier. We do the shipment, but then what we can do is something like we need to check, right, if our demand dot amount, well, actually, first of all, okay, we need to do a couple of things here. Okay, so we found our best supplier, we added a shipment. The total amount should actually be not demand amount, but supplier. Well, no, it should, well, okay. We need to figure this out, right? It should be the amount of the demand the supplier can actually fulfill, right? So int amount supplied equals to math.min demand dot amount and suppliers oh, wait a minute. This is where the supplier amount lives. Okay, so best supplier dot amount. Best supplier is just a logistics hub. Okay, wait. Let's change that. So let's make best supplier a tuple. So we'll have a logistics hub and an int. Okay. Something like that. And then what we'll do is when we create so here we go, not item one, let's call this hub and amount. Okay, so best supplier dot hub. Well, actually, we can just do best supplier is equal to supplier in this case, right? Yes. Okay, so this is another weird one. So we can't... could we assign this somehow? So if best supplier dot hub is equal to null, we can continue. Okay, yeah, so we'll work with that. Okay, so now we can get the amount. So we can get the minimum, right, between the demand amount and the best supplier amount. And this is the amount that I'm actually going to supply, right? Because there's no way I'm supplying. I can't supply more than the supplier has currently. Right. Okay. What I can do then is, instead of I do best supplier dot hub. What's the problem? Wait. You need to get the hub and add a shipment. So the origin is fine, that is fine. What resource is fine. Total amount is then the amount supplied. And then what we can do at the end is we can go best supplier dot amount minus equal amount supplied, and we can do demand dot amount minus equal amount supplied. So our demand went down. Well, okay. Cannot modify the members because it's a for each. This is annoying. Okay, let's do demands I. And then we'll just do a for loop here. Int I equals 0. I less than demands dot count I plus plus plus. I can't do I again, I need to do J. Yep, I'm inside an I loop already, so for J. Okay. Okay, so we get our demand and our best supplier. So our demands is just the jth element. Fine. Nearest distance. Okay. And what I actually want to do is, while true. Now this is going to be an interesting one, but hear me out. So, here's the idea. So we put a while true loop because we live dangerously. Essentially what I wanted to do is I wanted to come and find the best supplier. You know, it might as well find the second best and the third best supplier as well at the same time. Then it might as well just make a list of suppliers that's ordered. I wonder actually if that could work. I don't know. Do I search through the suppliers again and again? Or do I... You know what, let's search through the suppliers again and again. I don't think this is going to happen that often. Let's do this. So we'll do a while true, right? And this is the idea. It's just a while loop that goes on forever, but we can break out at any time. So, for instance, if our best supplier hub is equal to null, we continue. But actually, we should break out of the while loop, right? We should break. So we break out of the while loop. So we say, look, we couldn't find a good supplier, right? There was nothing. Nobody could supply it, so we're just going to break out. But that's not really going to happen most of the time. It's just in case, right? Now, here is where it gets interesting. Our best supplier amount goes down, right? And that's good. Our demand amount goes down. Now we can check if our demand.amount is less than or equal to 0. That means we've met this demand, so we can break. We can go on to the next demand. Right. Now, if the demand hasn't been fully met, what we'll have to do is we'll have to come back here. I guess grab the demand again. No. We do that before the while loop. It's the same demand, right? Yeah, should be the same amount. Same demand. So we come back, we reset our supplier. And now we look for the next best supplier. Now, the thing is, the next best supplier is not going to be our original supplier, because he's going to have, well, theoretically no more resources left. Either this supplier doesn't have resources, or the demand has been met completely. So we're going to have to get another supplier. Now, if we check and we can't, we break out. So now everything works, and then we continue with the next demand. Yeah, I like that. So we've created a shipment. Fantastic. Okay, now for a shipment, this is now a little bit of... When we want to send the shipments, right? We essentially want to check, are there any... At our logistics hub, do we have idle freighters? Do we have freighters just waiting around? And if we do, let's try and load them with a shipment and send them off. Right. So loading them and sending them is two different things, right? So we have idle freighters that might be partially loaded. Or not loaded at all. Yeah, what I should actually do is maybe have a list of freighters. Partially loaded freighters. And the idea here would be is that you have freighters that are idle, they're just not doing anything. They're just sitting there. But then you have freighters that already have been loaded, but they haven't been sent. So I think before we send the shipments, we should probably do something like private. Oh my word. Load freighters. Oh my word, I can't flip and spell. Okay, load freighters. So we've created shipments, so they exist theoretically. Now we can load freighters. So the first thing we have to do, I guess, we're gonna have to either go through. Do we go through our freighters first and then the shipments? I think so. So I think it's going to be for each freighter in, partially oh, here I have to go to. Oh wait. Okay, we load freighters, so we have to go through all the logistics hubs, right? Because each logistics hub could have freighters. Yeah, okay. So we have to do actually a for each logistics hub. I have to go through all the hubs, and then we have to decide what we do with the logistics hub. So we load the freighters. So I actually just want to go through my partially loaded freighters first, and then through my idle freighters. Okay, so what if we did a list of freighter available freighters? Okay, and then we can make this the hub dot partially loaded freighters. Right, and then we can do available freighters dot add range hub dot idle freighters. Now, if I add range, it adds them to the end, right? C#. Let's see. To the end of an existing list. Okay, so it adds the idle freighters to the end of my available freighters. I don't want to do it this way, right? I want to do new freighter list, and then I want to do available freighters dot add range I wanted to create a new list. Because if it doesn't create a new list, I might have just added the idle freighters to my partially loaded freighters inside of the logistics hub. Okay, so now I have all my freighters. Now I can do for each freighter in available freighters. So we look at each freighter, but we also need to look at for each shipment in hub.shipments. So this is quite a thing. Look at all that, all those for loops. Damn. For each loops. Okay, so we go through each shipment and we're trying to load the freighters. Right, so we have available freighters, which are partially loaded or idle freighters. Okay, great stuff. So we have to ask the freighter, look, how much space do you have left? And we have to calculate. Okay, so for the shipment, what we can do... Oh, wait a minute. There's now... I think when we create cargo, we should create the cargo as containers, right? So it could be an amount, but it could also be public int container amount. Yes, I think so. Now, I remember something about the container amount in the resource definition. So this is a new thing. I have a container size, which basically tells me how much I can add in a container. Right, and now the container amount is the cargo. Okay, so here's what we can do is we can say shipment, or let's do int shipment total containers. Okay, so this is just going to be shipment dot remaining amount divided by yeah, this is kind of annoying if I have to keep doing this containerizing of things. Unless we containerize it when we create the shipment already, so that I know how many containers am I going to be shipping and not do it here. So maybe the shipment also, instead of a total amount and a remaining amount, it's got total containers, remaining containers, something like that. Ah, yes. Yeah, and then this one doesn't have an amount, it just has a container amount. The container size we can get with the definition, right? We can just ask the definition. How big is a container? Okay, so let's work with that. Now here, we just have to be careful because the total containers is not the amount supplied. It's the amount supplied divided by game.definition database resource definitions. Okay, so let's do this here instead. Int container size equals game dot definition database dot resource definitions I container size, right? Yes. Okay, now here's another thing. So the amount supplied, and then the container size. Do we send full containers, right? Now these are two integers. Yeah, okay, so what happens if my amount supplied and my container amount? So let's think about it. What if amount supplied is 1,250 and my container's size is 100, right? It's gonna get 12 containers. So we round down? Maybe we do. Maybe we do round down. So int container amount equals amount supplied divided by container size. Right? And then the container amount. No, that's not what I wanted to do. That's my total containers, and then remaining containers is equal to container count as well. Okay, this is not correct then. Then the best supplier and the demand. So this is not going to be amount supplied, or this would rather be container amount times container size, so that if any rounding and things happened, you know, the amounts are correct. Okay, that also means if the supplier amount is less than or equal to, no, is less than a full container. Yeah, so our container size, we could have gotten that there already. Right, because the container size is depending on the material. So if the amount we can supply is less than the container size, so we can't even fill a single container, don't worry about it, right? We're not sending anything less than a container. Then you can basically say you have nothing. So if my supplier.amount is less than container size, we skip it. Okay, that should then help. Okay, so now everything is in containers, which I like a lot. So our shipment total containers, this is not something we do. Okay, so now let's think about this again. Okay, so our freighter dot So container capacity is, I suppose, and we have these cargoes. And each cargo is some amount of containers. Okay, let's do max containers and then current containers. So that's how many it has currently. That's the maximum amount it can have. So what we want to do is we, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, We want to create a new cargo, but we need to decide how big the cargo is going to be based on either the shipment size or the freighter size. So we can say int container amount equals to math.minimum either the freighter dot remaining cargo. So okay, wait. Int freighter capacity equals freighter dot max containers minus freighter dot current containers, right? That tells me how much I have. So either we're going to go with the freighter capacity or the shipment dot remaining containers, right? So the amount of containers remaining. So we take the minimum of the two. Okay. And then we create a new cargo. So cargo, new cargo, and let's add all its niceties. So what does the cargo need? So it needs a shipment. So shipment equals shipment. A container amount. No, destination resource container amount. So destination. This we can get in the shipment dot destination, right? Resource is in the shipment, and then container amount is equal to container amount. So that is our cargo. It's been created. Okay, so the shipment is now being sent. So now we can do shipment, shipment dot remaining containers minus equal container amount. And then if the remaining containers is less than equal to 0, we kind of want to remove the shipment, right? You know, actually. Okay, well, freighter capacity must also go down with, well, no, the current containers on the freighter. Yeah, freighter dot current containers will go up with container amount, and then freighter dot cargoes, we add the cargo. Right, so now the freighter has the cargo added. Now the next thing we could do is, so now we did the first shipment. Now we go to the second shipment. Right. So we need to think about this. So if the shipments okay, so we go to the second shipment. But before we go to the second shipment, we should check if the current freighter that we are looking at is full. If this nonsense, the freighter max containers and the current containers is less than or equal to 0, we continue. Right, so we need to go to the next freighter. Where do we do that? There? Oh, we break out of the list of shipments, yeah. Yeah. We break out of the list of shipments because there's no reason to go check another shipment if we already know our freighter is full. Well, what we could do actually is we could just do it here. If freighter capacity less than equal to 0, we can break instead, right? Yeah, I think that makes more sense. So we break out of the shipments because there's no reason checking another shipment if our freighter capacity is in fact full. Okay, so that makes sense. So then we go get a new freighter, we go through the shipments again. Now, here's an interesting part. The shipment might actually already be full. Okay, so that means we should consume the shipments as we go, which means this should not be, this should be a queue. Not a list of shipments, it should be a queue of shipments. Okay, hold that thought. I'll be right back. And I'll grab some coffee, use the restroom, and I'll be back. But yeah, this should be a queue. The reason is because we want to consume it, right? We don't want... we can't remove this shipment from the queue now because it's going to break. Okay, so let's go. Be right back. Haze. Now I'm ready. Okay. Okay, so the next thing, let's think about this. So the logistics, okay, so we had a shipment list. We also had a cargo list, but I think both of these need to be queues. A shipment queue and a cargo queue. Let's call this then a shipment queue instead. And let's call this a cargo queue. And the idea would be that, and I might change the way this works, but so load freighters is currently first consuming shipments. And maybe we should have cargo be prioritized. So that's now an interesting thing. It's like, do we try to create new cargoes from the shipments and send those? Or do we first try to forward, so transfer existing cargo? I don't know. Yeah, but this would have broken some things because you can't just you can't just add. So we need to enqueue a shipment here. Right. And then here, when we go through the shipments, this is not how you consume a queue. You could do a while shipment. So while shipment, while the hub dot shipment queue is is it a count? Yeah. Greater than 0. So while we have something in our queue, we can do this. And then our shipment equals, and I don't think we dequeue, I think we just peak, right? Yeah, we peak at the shipment to use it. And then at the end, we can check if the shipment containers are then nothing, we can dequeue it. Right, so we can do a check here, and that is consuming the shipment then. So if shipment dot remaining containers less than equal to 0, not break necessarily, but rather hub.shipmentQueue.dequeue. Right, so we dequeue that shipment, so our shipment queue count now gets lower, and then we can go back. So the way the queue works, right, is peak will always take the first element. So you're going to go here, and you're going to see like, oh, I still have a shipment. You get here, and now two things can happen. It can either say, okay, wait a minute, this might not work. It dequeues, it peaks again. Okay, it does break when my freighter capacity. Okay, so if it doesn't dequeue, it'll try that same shipment again. Right, but it will keep the same freighter, so it will still break. Yeah, so the freighter capacity it'll then break. So it'll peak the shipment. It's kind of dumb that it does it that way. So maybe we only need the shipment. Wait, yes. Right here. So we can break before, if for some reason we've already filled this freighter, we can break from the while loop and get the next freighter before we peak shipments and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay, but now here's my other question, or the other thing I was thinking about, is should we... So we've loaded cargo onto a freighter, right? But should we have done this with the cargo that's waiting first? That's the real question now. What takes priority? A new shipment or freight that's being forwarded? I don't know how to answer that. Yeah, and the problem is they are two different types of things, so... And the cargo is only created when the shipment is being... You know what? There's now another problem. Actually, now that I think about this is kind of dumb. The cargo idea, it doesn't really work because if you think about it, the shipment itself... So the cargo could go through the same thing as the shipment, where a cargo might arrive at a hub and then only partially be placed onto another shipment, onto a freighter. So then again, we have this problem where a single cargo might be split into multiple shipments. We could have one container, one container on a ship. Yeah, so this thing can split itself into many cargoes many times. So maybe a cargo isn't the correct thing to think about. Maybe it is just a shipment. Because if we can split the cargo again, or split the shipment again and again. Yeah, because the original shipment might be split into two cargoes, but then each of those cargoes might be split again. So then what's the point of having them be different things? Like a cargo should be able to be split down to a container, essentially. Okay, a shipment could be the thing you send originally. That's fine. And then, but the cargo should then also be able to split if required. This is gonna be such a flippin' mess now. Every time we split the cargo, we need to make sure it knows where it's going, what it is, and how much it is. Unless cargo creates a shipment and queues it when it arrives at the next destination. So it goes sit behind So a shipment can be split into cargo. That might work. So what if we don't know the origin? We know the destination, the resource, total containers, and remaining containers. I think I'm going to do this. So I'm going to get rid of the origin. So a new shipment will be created, or a new cargo will be created. Should I have constructors for these? Maybe I should. Okay, so here's my new idea. Shit. Okay, so we don't have a shipment for cargo. I don't think that's necessary. It doesn't need to know about the shipment itself, but it does need to have a destination, the resource, and then an amount, right? That makes sense. And the shipment does not need an origin. Yeah. Okay, so we create shipments based on demands, right? We can load a freighter with a shipment. I think we can also, before we load freighters, I think what we should do is private void. Well, load freighters we do whenever we can. But there's another thing we do, and that is receive a freighter. Or unload freighters, right? So that's another thing we do, unload freighter. But I don't think we do that. You know what? We could do that. I'm just thinking. So what I'm thinking is, okay, I'm thinking a couple of things. I'm not sure if idle freighters are the correct things. There's a bit of a issue here. Because you'll have a hub, right? So this is my problem. You'll have a hub. It sits over here. And then there's 2 corridors, let's say, or 3 corridors. The freighters are not assigned to the hub. They are assigned to the corridor. So idle freighters would be, there will be idle freighters at this end of the corridor and at that end of the corridor, right? But the idle freighters, you can't take this idle freighter and send it down that route. So the correct way to have this work is the idle freighters should still live in the corridor. And what I think we should have is a public, another queue. And this is going to be a freighter queue. And this is, well, we should have 2 freighter queues potentially. And this is the freighter unload queue. And this might be the freighter refuel queue. So the idle freighter doesn't live here. What lives here might be a logistics corridor and 2 connections, hub 1 and hub 2. Right? And your hub knows about the logistics. So it's got a list of logistics corridor. Logistics corridors, right? And if I think about it, so, and obviously the logistics corridor knows about the 2 connections, so it knows the next hub over. and the current hub. Okay. And I also think it should have a public list of freighter, which is the idle freighters. So idle freighters hub 1, idle freighters hub 2, and this is not idle freighters, this might be moving freighters, right? I'll just call this hub 1 and hub 2, to be honest. Okay, so the idea would be something like this: private void refuel freighters. So we unload the freighters, we refuel the freighters, and then we load the freighters. Right, now we have to go through each logistics hub. And the idea would be is, okay, we unload a freighter when it has arrived. So they might arrive and go sit in the freighter unload queue, right? And I might later, right now, this is just going to do all of them, but later I might have some time pass, right? So I might not do unload freighters all at once. I might do a freighter every couple of seconds or something. Actually, how would I do that? You know what? I can figure that out later. Let's just try to make all the freighters unload immediately. Right, so what do we do now is for each freighter, freighter in, freighter queue, unload freighter queue. That's not right. What is my queue? Freighter unload queue. Oh, in hub.freighter unload queue. Right. So, what we want to do, that is not how you go through a list. So, while hub.freighter unload queue.count, right, that's how you consume a queue. You do freighter equals DQ. So we DQ it and we process it, right? So here's what we do. I think we create a new shipment using this cargo. So we go for each cargo. This is an interesting one. Okay, so here's another thing. Let's imagine your shipment is broken into 2 cargoes, and it arrives. Yeah, I don't think. Okay, so what I was thinking is, so it's broken into 2 cargoes, then it arrives at the hub. Do I try to merge them back into one shipment, or do I just treat them as 2 separate things? I think I just treat them like 2 separate things. I just keep them separate, yeah. So for each cargo in freighter.cargoes, I guess, Okay, so here when we unload the freighter, we should tell the hub if it should consume the freighter or not. Right. We should also, when a shipment is created, we should actually remove the cargo from the shipment, from the current resources of that logistics hub. So we should probably have something like a public void, remove resources. And this should give us a logistics hub. The hub that we want to remove it from, int resource and integer amount, right? Okay, and then what we can do is we can do hub dot current resources resource minus equal amount. Okay, that's basically what we do. Now, what we could do here is check if we can remove the amount. Right. Okay, if hub dot current resources resource greater than or equal to amount, then we can remove the amount. Okay, something super straightforward like that. I guess that's okay. Yeah, and we essentially have to do that here. Where, you know, our supplier, our best supplier, hub dot, well, no, actually we have to call remove resources with our best supplier dot hub, the resource I, and not our container amount, but our container amount times container size, right? That's how much we remove. So we remove resources from our best supplier. It's very straightforward, but I mean, we should do that because the resources are now effectively inside of a shipment, right? So the resources exist in the shipment, and later they will exist in the cargo. They won't exist on in the hub inventory anymore. Okay, so for each cargo in freighter.cargoes, now we need to think if, let's say, cargo.destination equals hub. So we actually want to consume the cargo. So if our destination is this hub, we essentially have to add the cargo. Add don't know if I need to do that necessarily. Remove resources from hub. But it's fine. It's a similar type of deal. Okay, just something straightforward like that. So then we do hub dot current resources. We go to the correct thing plus equals amount. Very straightforward. For each hub, I just want to do this there. I don't really need to, but anyway. So we do add resources to a hub. So we grab our hub. The resource, we do cargo.resource, and then the amount, we do cargo dot container amount. Okay, wait a minute. This is annoying. Well, sort of annoying. But what we need to get first is this thing. Container size. Okay, so we have the container amount multiplied by container size. I guess we could just let the cargo know the amount. And the reason I'm thinking that is because later I might want to see, you know, in game, in UI or whatever, I want to know, okay, how many resources does this thing have? And I don't every time want to do this conversion with the container size. Yeah, so what I would want to do is just do cargo dot resource amount, right? When we add it to the hub, yeah. So we can also do int resource amount. So this is now going to be the container amount multiplied by the container size. The reason I do this is because the integer math that's happening here will probably round this down, right? So just need to be careful of that. So when I remove the resources, I could just do resource amount here instead. And the same here. Resource amount. Resource amount. And, you know, my shipment can have the same idea here. Total containers, remaining containers. I don't know if I want this to be like that, but this I do. So the cargo itself can have a resource amount. The shipment, okay, so where's the cargo created the first time? Let me just... Okay, so here we get the container amount. And then we can do resource. We need to do a comma. Equals container amount multiplied by game. Yeah, if the shipment knew that this is... Well, the container amount is its own thing, right? Yeah. Definition database, resource definitions. Okay, so now we know the resource amount in our cargo when we create our cargo. So yeah, that's okay. I'm happy with that. And now we can just straight get the resource amount when we add the resource to the hub. Yeah, I guess that's what I do with the cargo, right? When it's at the correct hub, I consume it. We just add the resource to the hub, and I guess we remove it from... Okay, that's now one of those annoying things. We remove it from the freighter. Well, okay, we go through all the cargo, we decide what to do with it, and then what I could do here is freighter.cargo .clear. I could just clear it, right? Because I know I went through the whole thing. So that freighter has clear cargo now. Yeah. That's fine. Okay. Okay, where were we? Okay, so we go through the cargo. We either consume it or else, right? If it's not that, then it's probably the case that this thing has to continue. So what I think I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a new shipment at this. Yeah. Shipment equals new shipment, and so we don't actually remove anything or anything like that, but so we just create a new shipment and we give it you know what, I'm gonna make the constructor for this because I think I keep coming back down here and it's annoying me right now. I keep forgetting what I need to add here. Okay, so we add logistics hub, destination, int resource, int container amount, int resource amount. Actually, the resource amount we could just find. Could we just find it? I don't know. This is now gonna break everything, hey, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, fine. Forget I even mentioned that. Let's just continue with what we are doing. Okay, so we create a new shipment, and creating a new shipment, we need to do... We need a destination equals the specific cargo dot destination, right? Then we need a resource. Yeah, that's fine. We need a total containers. That's just going to be cargo dot container amount. And then we need remaining containers. No problem. Okay, so that we create a new shipment. And then we need to queue this in my shipment. So hub.shipmentqueue.enqueue shipment. So this is now how it works. A shipment is something waiting at a hub. A cargo is something being transported. So a cargo can become a shipment, and a shipment can become multiple cargoes. So this is how a cargo gets consumed, right? So we go through the cargoes. Each of them either get added to the resource because it has the resources it needs, or it gets made into a shipment and then queued at the hub, and then the freighter clears its cargo. Fantastic. Okay, and once we've gone through our entire unload queue, okay, so when our entire unload queue is done, we go to the next hub and we unload. Now, there's one more thing we should do. Apparently, we need another. Okay, you shouldn't be there. You should be there after we go through the cargoes list. Yeah. We also need to do freighter refuel queue .enqueue freighter. Right, because the freighter is now not fueled, so we need to fuel it. Okay, I like that a lot. So now freighters are unloaded, new shipments were created, everything is good in the world. Okay, and the freighters are now waiting to be fueled. So now we go refuel freighter, and you know what? It's going to look similar. So we're going to do for each logistics hub in logistics hubs, no problem. Then we're going to do while hub.freighter refuel queue .count is greater than 0. We essentially want to refuel the freighters, right? Okay, what we should do is peak at the freighter. So freighter equals freighter. Okay, no, hub dot freighter refuel queue dot peak. Right, I want to peak at this because fuel int fuel needed equals freighter dot fuel. Okay, so the freighter, we don't actually know how much fuel the freighter needs. We just know if it is fueled or not. So this is like definition stuff, right? I should maybe split this a little bit. So this is like gameplay or stuff that changes, and this is the definition. So things like max containers is obviously a part of the definition of a freighter. The cargoes, is it fueled, the current containers, the position, AU position, these things change So they're part of gameplay. And I think we also have a public end fuel tank size. Why not? Fuel tank size, which just tells us how much fuel it can take in the tank, right? There might be other things the definition requires, but for now, like speed and stuff like that, I suppose, for a freighter. For now, this is the things we need, right? So what we can do, fuel tank size. Okay, and now we can check if, now this is where it gets interesting. So we want our hub current resources, right? So we can check if hub.current resources, and this is another definition thing. Or is it? It might not be. Public int fuel type. The reason it might not be a definition thing is because, we might change the fuel that we use for the freighters in the future to make them faster. For now, it's going to live in limbo, right? Is it a gameplay thing that I can change, or is it a definition thing? I don't know. Okay. But what we're going to do is we're going to go freighter.fuel type. Okay. If this is greater than or equal to freighter.fuel tank, just fuel needed, right? Fuel needed. Then we can continue to refuel the freighter. Right, so then we're going to go freighter.isFuel true, and we can do we can do remove resources from hub. We can give it the hub freighter.fuel type and fuel needed. Right, something straightforward like that. So we've fueled it, we've removed the fuel, and we continue to the next freighter. Oh wait, and then we need to do hub.freighter refuel queue DQ. Right. Now, yeah, we could do this for all of them. So for each freighter in the queue. Actually, no. If I can't fill a freighter, I want to wait. So maybe we don't do this. Right. Maybe we check if the fuel needed, or if it's less than fuel needed, we break. We break from this entirely. Right, so we break out of this while loop. We stop trying to refuel freighters. Because I'm not letting somebody skip the queue because they have a smaller tank. Yes. Okay, and we can continue until we run out of fuel. Okay, fine. That's not a problem. And then for each logistics hub, we just run through each logistics hub. Yeah, I'm very interested to know how we can artificially slow down this loop, right? Because this is obviously going to happen in a blink of an eye. But I kind of want it to take a few seconds. But I'll think about that at a different time. Okay, so now we can load the freighters. So we've done everything. We've created shipments from, and this we create from a demand and a supply. We evaluate the storage, we create the shipments, we unload freighters, we refuel freighters, we load freighters. Now we haven't sent freighters yet. We also haven't received a freighter yet. So those are the next two things that we have to do. And sending and receiving a freighter is not going to be that difficult, right? It's just basically going to queue it or, shove it into one of the logistics corridors. But that is kind of difficult because we need to know which logistics corridor to... Actually, yeah, this is another problem. This partially loaded freighters should belong to a logistics corridor instead of the logistics hub. Now, yeah, so that is actually something we should change. Okay. I'm not going to change it right now. I'm going to call it there. Need to get to work and all that good stuff. So, yeah, let me get out of here. Thank you guys for dropping by. Oh, Brian. Brian, thanks for the follow. I completely missed that. I don't know when that happened. Sorry. But yeah, I'll see you guys. I'll spend a few seconds quickly just checking if I can raid somebody, but I don't really think I'm gonna. Oh no, what did I just do? Okay, you know what, whatever. Cheers, everybody.